Awesome. Well, thank you, and welcome to the Bradenton Kiwanis Club. I'll start things off with our invocation. Bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to come together, and thank you for all the blessings that you've given us. Please help to keep us safe and find a cure as your will would dictate, and be with us as we tend to the needs of our community. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You do have a few announcements.
I do. Neil couldn't be here because he's actually over at Angel's office taking care of some paperwork and things over there for her. But he did want me to mention that this coming weekend is the last Kids Against Hunger, and all the slots are filled for right now, so we're good with that one. And Manatee Sunrise will be coming up with another batch of food packaging things, probably starting in November. The coastal cleanup with Keep Manatee Beautiful is still going on. They've got one scheduled for October 3rd and in the 10th, and it's in the newsletter if you need to find out where. There's no cost or anything else, just show up. And food for families. We're going to be working with Meals on Wheels Plus again in October on the 29th and the 30th. All we're expecting is to try to get some volunteers to help package the food up before it gets distributed on Saturday. And Meals on Wheels has the distribution day on Saturday covered. So that's basically all I've got as far as announcements go.
Well, thank you. Any guests on?
No, sir.
Christy, did you have anything?
So no, I don't have any announcements.
Okay.
Do you want to have Gilbert read the history?
Yes, please.
We finished up in 1936, and the Bradenton Trailer Camp had been completed. But going into 1937, the Bradenton Kiwanis Club continued to plan for the future and was now ready to construct additional lots for trailers at the camp. The plans were to increase from 200 units to 500 units to accommodate the increased residency at the camp expected through the winter of 1937. R.M. Bell continued to lead the club in this project with successful results. And the manner of paying for the new construction was a campaign that he started through the club to raise funds from the members. The Bradenton Trailer Camp continued to be recognized nationally as one of the most successful trailer camps in the United States. On January 6, 1937 at 7 p.m., the club held its annual Ladies' Night in the installation at the Dixie Grand Hotel. Dr. McDuffie was sworn in as the 1937 president along with the other officers and directors. And the duration of the program was shortened that evening so that everybody could go to a dance at the Bradenton Trailer Camp. When President McDuffie took office, he was a prominent medical, mature doctor who appreciated how the medical community had progressed in Manatee County. He was also one of the oldest men to serve as the president of the Bradenton Kiwanis Club, being 72 years old at that time. What he stressed during his year as president was good citizenship. Now, he was born in 1865 in Tennessee, just a few months after the Civil War ended. And he graduated from the University of Tennessee Medical School in 1899 and then practiced in Spring Hill before moving to Manatee County to find healthier climate for his wife, Ida, who was ill with tuberculosis. He operated in an office on the second floor of the Arcade building in the Davis block in Manatee. He developed a successful practice and was president of the Manatee Medical Society. In 1909, his wife died, Ida died, and after a couple of years, he married Ida's sister, Lily Brown. And Lily went on to write a popular local history book, The Lures of Manatee, which a lot of you have probably read and know about. Even though he had a busy medical practice, Dr. McDuffie also found time to serve the community as the mayor of Manatee, the city of Manatee, for 4 years, and as chairman of the Manatee County School Board for up to 6 years. He was the school board honored him later in life by naming the McDuffie building in the old Manatee Elementary School. And after practicing medicine and serving his community for over 40 years, he died at 80 years old. Now, in January 19th, 1937, at the Dixie Grand Hotel, the club members listened to a number of different speakers, and a lot of them talked about they came from the residents living at the Bradenton Trailer Camp. They were the speakers, and one of the speakers was Dr. Harrison Weaver, who was the trainer of the St. Louis Cardinals. It did not take long for the Bradenton Trailer Camp to become profitable. By the end of January 1937, with the units that they had built in 1936, after paying all the expenses, there was enough profit for the club to use to its Christmas charity for underprivileged children, and also a little bit more to spread around the community. The club's reputation for using profits from the Bradenton Trailer Camp for the benefit of children was continued to reach people beyond Manatee County, and they were getting a lot of recognition. Then in the end of 1937, in a special meeting at the Dixie Grand Hotel, R.M. Bell provided a status report on the Bradenton Trailer Camp, and in just 1 month, they had built many more improvements that included a modernized wash house with 14 zinc-lined wash baths in a row with 2 electric washing machines, a clothesline and ironing boards, and 2 toilet centers and shower houses with hot water all the time. The garbage was picked up every day. And for recreation, there was a shuffleboard court, 5 horseshoe courts, a dance hall, and a card room. The year went by, and at the end of the year in December, at the December 14th meeting, Whiten Holmes Troutman was elected as president of the club for the next year. And at the installation dinner later, just 4 days before Christmas, he was sworn in. Whiten Troutman was the plant manager of the Coca-Cola plant in Bradenton. And he used that position to help the club in many ways by furnishing Coca-Cola a lot of the time. He did that on many occasions when club members would go to Camp Flying Eagle to work at the camp. And he was born in Georgia, and after moving to Bradenton, he became the manager of that camp. And he had served on the Bradenton City Council for several years before he was appointed mayor of Bradenton. And during World War II, he resigned to go in with the Army Signal Corps during World War II, and later he became a president of the Bradenton Okeechobee Fishing Club, for those of you that didn't know one existed. And after many years of service, he died in 1968 at age 79. By the end of the year, 1937, the club had inducted new members, including Paul Davis, who a lot of you in education know who that is, Roland Shannon, and Sam Wooten. And it was a very good year in 1937.
Thank you, Gilbert. That is always so interesting. When will the book be published?
That's a good question. It will be published when we have our 100-year anniversary.
Awesome. Okay. And definitely looking forward to that. And then what was the other book that you mentioned? That
Lure of Manatee.
The Lure of Manatee?
The Lures of Manatee has been around for quite a long time, and you can find all these at the library, but The Lures of Manatee was one of the first history books written by someone local here. I think it was probably written in the 40s.
Okay, awesome. We'll get that. Good read. All right, we have just a couple of minutes before we switch over to the Vimo. Open it
So
up.
I have Angel's bio to read before we switch over.
Okay, perfect. How about you read that bio and we'll switch over.
Okay. Oh, this is Angel sent her bio over. It's short. Probably not all the things that she probably should have in her bio, but we all know Angel well enough to know that she is very humble. She is the clerk of our circuit courts and the comptroller in Manatee County. She has 30 years of experience as a public servant. She has served as the Manatee County's assistant state attorney and as general counsel for the clerk's office until she was appointed by Governor Rick Scott in 2015 as the new clerk of the court. Angel earned her bachelor's degree in criminal justice from USF and her law degree from the New England School of Law. Clerk Colonesso also serves as the president-elect of the Florida Court Clerks and Comptrollers Association and is active in many of the association's committees. She was also appointed by Senate President Bill Galvano to the Clerk of the Court Operations Corporation. She's also recently appointed by the Florida Supreme Court to the Florida Courts Technology Commission. So you guys all know Angel. I would encourage you to talk to her about these other appointments that she has. It's actually really impressive to me, the outreach that she has across the state, the other offices. Lots of knowledge. So with that, the Vimeo link is in the chat. If you want to click on it and switch over, they just texted that they're ready to go.
Well, thank you. We'll see you all in Vimeo land.
Welcome, Bradenton Kiwanis. We are so excited today to be with one of our fellow members, Angel Colonesso. You are going to learn so much, I hope, about her dominion, her domain. There is so much she's actually in charge of, the many hats that she wears that we were unaware of, that we want to share that with you. You know, these series of get to know your candidates, get to know our public officials, we hope that you have learned a lot and have been sharing the link with your friends. You know, the best part of being in our community of Manatee County is not only about the great things that go on, but how we can be better citizens, volunteer, be educated, really know where we're supposed to go for the best information and who we need to talk to in regards to getting things done in our very own backyard. So we're going to start with Angel's title today, just as an opener. She's the clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller, Manatee County. So Angel, is that a unique title? Does every clerk in the state of Florida have that title?
No, they do not. Every clerk does not have that title. Some of them are clerks of the court for their county, but they are not the comptroller. In this county, in Orange County, for example, that is one county where the comptroller duties are separate and the comptroller is independently elected. So in Manatee County, I serve as both.
Now, in addition to those, we're going to go over a lot of your different divisions. You pretty much have 7 divisions plus just a general administration. Mm-hmm. People don't realize you have, if I remember correctly, 3 budgets you're over.
Right.
So
correct.
Let's start with finance. Mm-hmm. I know our viewers are probably very interested. Not only how has the pandemic affected your office, because you do have a whole division of fees, mm-hmm. people working and stuff. So why don't you share with us, going right into finance, those things you believe our viewer, it's good for them to know, and then update us on how COVID's affected some of those things.
Okay. And our finance department has a lofty responsibility in this office. They are actually funded by the Board of County Commissioners, and I'll get to the funding source for as we go along. The Comprehensive Annual Financial Report is about a 500-page document, and that is put out by my team in finance, and I'm proud to say we are in our 40th, last year we finished our 40th consecutive year of winning the award for the Florida Government Officer Association of Finance, the Excellence in Financial Reporting. We also won our popular report, Excellence in Financial Reporting, for the 21st year. And we also put out, in our popular report, by the way, is a booklet like this. You can pick it up. It's also online, and it's really great. We do a theme every year. Last year it was historical. There are pictures throughout, but it's a very good read, and it breaks it all down easily, the finance and the budgets for all 5 constitutional officers. And we also do the port CAFR, and that is an unusual position because I am the only clerk in the state of Florida who oversees the port finances as well. So there's about 3 items that I do that other clerks don't, and that is the port, the historical resources, and I have the original pilot program of the Department of Revenue Child Support Enforcement under my roof, thanks to my predecessor. He initiated that, and we can get to that later. Our finance department does handle the grants for local and federal, the investment portfolio, and that comes with a whole array of statutory restrictions on it. Some people may think that you can invest the county's funds in the stock market, but that's actually prohibited. I have to maintain that principle and protect that principle, and we prepare for liquidity, and based on those 2, then you get your return on investment. So we invest the entire county's funds into short-term instruments and draw down on it to pay the county's bills. We have our clerk's accounting department that handles all of the clerk's business for finance. It handles our side of the house, so to speak. Our courts department is under the clerk's finance piece. That is money that we get in from the state avenue. I can explain that later, how I mean that. But our clerk of courts operation of corporations handles the finance of the clerks statewide, and they handle that, and they handle all of the fees and where the fees go when they bring in and are dispersed to different trust funds around the state. And our board accounting department side in finance, they handle the money that comes in for our historical resources, and our board side functions such as recording and their own department, the board of county commissioners accounting side of the house upstairs. And our asset management is in charge of all the tagged assets in the county, as well as the 5 independent constitutional officers. So every computer, anything that's got a county tag on it, my office is in charge of inventorying and making sure everything is handled appropriately. And last but not least, and certainly not last, there's so many functions to the finance office, I won't bore everybody today, but accounts payable is very important because we make sure there is a lawful public purpose behind every payment that the county makes. And my signature, as well as the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, goes on that check, and they do a pre-audit, if you will, to make sure everything is in place to ensure that that money is being spent properly.
So that was a lot of information just in one department. Just because I'm curious, so does that mean like you're even responsible for the paying the electric bill on behalf of the county?
Yes, we pay the bills for the county essentially, and any contracts and anything that comes through, if it's being paid by the county and if the Board of County Commissioners votes on it, if it's just regular fees, we handle all the funds for the county. We oversee that. We have the oversight of that, and that's for independence, transparency.
I am sure that that in itself, people weren't even aware of, that, you're paying utilities, you're making sure, grants are going out right now that I'm sure you'll talk about soon.
Right.
So, all right, so you're paying all the bills, you're tracking, you're making sure that everybody is spending the money the way they're supposed to. So explain to me one of the other departments. It's the Audit Inspector General.
This one is interesting. There's been a movement over the last, ever since my predecessor held office, a movement to go toward Inspector General. It was something that I looked into and I took my time to look at, and I didn't want to just rename us because you have to just call yourself Inspector General. It's as simple as that in the beginning. And the reason behind doing that is you get access to more classes and training regarding investigations that come through, because sometimes our audits either turn into investigations or we have a fraud hotline and then our audit department would investigate that. We are now called the Inspector General's office, and there's sometimes a misconception of that somehow I have authority over elections, over everything. I only have authority over the county and its departments. That is it. I cannot audit a constitutional officer unless they invite me to come in and by law and audit, and that's happened in the past where they've asked us to come in and audit their departments. But the county is a big enough jurisdiction to have, because every year, last year we did 17 audits, 10 projects, we had 1,700 consultant hours, and we also assist with our outside auditors. That audit department assists so that we cut our costs to outside auditors, and they handle a few jobs that the outside auditors provide for them. The purpose behind going to Inspector General, the auditors operate off of a red book, which is the audit standards, yellow book, which are government standards, the green book are your investigative standards. So we've introduced that other layer to give people an insured protection that we are when we do investigations and those results come out, you know they are done by certified inspector generals, which now we have 2 since starting. My goal is to have that department certified as an inspector general department. And many people think that we have, like I said, jurisdiction over many things, but we don't. Grant money, for example, that goes from the county to a nonprofit, we audit only the units. Some people think if there's a controversy, we can go in and audit the entire nonprofit. We cannot do that. If the nonprofit receives money for 10 units, 10 beds, let's say, we go in and we verify there are 10 beds, that they're going by the requirements in the grant. We can't, just by virtue of them accepting some of their funding from the county, go in and audit the entire agency.
In regards to the audit, is it all just financial, or is part of your investigation process also some of the processes?
There are processes, procedures, there are compliance type audits, and my auditor, who is at the head of the department, my director of Inspector General, she would tell you sometimes I use the word audit. Audit is a term that we all, I think, use and blanket, but they call certain things projects, certain things are reviews, and that's how it's not all audit.
Great. Okay, so let's go into something that people probably do know, because we see your little officer or your clerk person on television on Tuesdays when the county commission's there.
Correct.
They're having their meetings, and so that's board records.
Yes.
And so actually when it says board, we're talking about the Board of County Commission records.
Right.
So why don't you explain that and how that works?
They are charged with we're also charged with taking the minutes during the board meetings. Last year we did 140 minutes of various board meetings, work sessions, and committees that they have. I believe there are 12 committees. And my clerks in the board records department have to clerk those and take down the minutes, which are available also on our website, and I'll give you that at the end. A lot of people think, and I've been asked the question, why isn't the clerk in all of these meetings? The clerk should be there. And the truth is, the clerk is there. They're deputy clerks. I deputize my clerks. I can't be at every board meeting any more than I can be in every courtroom simultaneously, while my trial clerks are also clerking court. So when it says the clerk has the duty, it is the clerk's office, and I deputize people to go on my behalf, and they have all of the power that I do in that room with their signature, with the exception of appointing other deputies.
That's a perfect segue. Let's go from the Board of County Commissioners and taking minutes. So now let's go into the courts.
Okay.
Because clerk of the court, people know that normally you have something to do.
Right.
But they probably don't know how much you guys actually support the court system here in town.
Right. And you'll all have to bear with me. I get very excited when I talk about the clerk's office because of all the things that we do. We've processed over 61,000 cases last year. We impact lives in this office. Any major event that's happened in someone's life, we handle. We have assisted 6,642 jurors last year. We issued nearly 2,500 marriage licenses, 700 ceremonies. And our child support enforcement division is not part of our courts division. I'll get to that in a minute, but there's a child support depository department. So we have 2. Between the 2 of them, they brought in $53 million in child support last year. And we oversee teen court as well. And I'll get to the other court divisions in a second, but the teen court function is where certain crimes that are not serious, kids have a second chance. They can go to teen court, the attorneys are their peers, and the jurors are their peers. And sometimes they get sentenced to serve certain jury duties and public service work hours. And on one particular time, a few years ago, we had a blind student who wanted to volunteer. His mother called and said he really wants to volunteer. Is this doable? And we said, sure, absolutely. We'll find a way to make it happen. So he came in and he did really great. The kids were great. He served on juries, and they led him back to the jury room. He took part in deliberations, and he decided that he wanted to be the clerk because students actually act as the clerk in the courtroom. So doing that, you have to read the docket, you have to read off the case number, and you have to read off the style of the case, and you kind of kick off that court session after the judge takes the bench. And what happened, he had a Braille machine, so he brought in the Braille machine, and with the assistance of our teen court staff, we typed up those dockets for him. And the first night he did teen court, He read it off in Braille, and he announced the case. His whole family came, and he ended up being the clerk until he graduated. And that was a really, I don't think there was a dry eye in our directors meeting when that story was relayed. We all felt good about that. 200 students have participated in that. We also do passports. And right now we're not, because the Miami office has put a hold on that for emergencies only. And frankly, due to our budget constraints, which I'll get to, I had to stop doing the passports momentarily, but they're not processing them in Miami anyway at this time unless it's an emergency. Project Greenlight, we're required by the legislature now to hold a Project Greenlight once a year. That helps people pay off their fines for their driver's license so that they can get back out on the road and get their driver's license back. And we work with them, and it's usually a Saturday event. We bring DHSMV here. It's a one-stop shop, and they can get their licenses restored to them. The Department of Financial Recovery is a department that used to be, when I first started here in 1990, those fees did not go collected. Court fees went to judgment, and it just kind of sat there until people paid it off or wanted to do something and get their credit back in shape. The Financial Recovery Department has since been in inception, and it's kind of a collections department, if you will, and it's collected since its inception $12.3 million. We've processed 1,031 domestic violence injunctions last year. And with COVID, there's been an uptick this year. There wasn't at first, but in the last couple of months, we noticed we're averaging about 84 a month from 72. The Circuit Civil Division handles, and I'm going to go through this list quickly because it's a long list. The Circuit Civil Division, just to give you an idea, divorces, annulments, adoptions, paternity, name changes, negligence, malpractice, eminent domain, mortgage foreclosures, and contract cases. These are all of our Circuit Civil type cases that come in. And Criminal Civil Division handles all of the felony crimes that carry more than 1129 days in the county jail: murder, sexual battery, robbery, burglary, grand theft. We partner with our public safety community because we have partners in the public safety community that we have to work with, the jail and everything, to get these people processed. My staff puts the dockets together. They enter those cases into the system, and we are accountable for about 23 items that we are accountable for confidentiality. So my staff has to know what comes out of those court records and gets redacted by law that are deemed confidential in nature, in both civil and criminal. In juvenile, we handle delinquency and dependency, and in probate, we have the probate department that handles the estates, and guardianships. We also have someone in the probate department who audits the guardianships. We do Baker Acts, Marchman Acts. And in county civil, that's where you'll find small claims, tenant evictions, and in the criminal side, it'll be traffic citations, anything that's minor, assault, battery, under 11 months, 29 days in the county jail. And we do evidence management, and that's huge. It requires, there are certain time frames we have to follow. With everything in my office, there is a state mandate or a court rule for the record keeping, and after so much time you destroy the record, but you have to keep it pursuant to those times. Evidence is no different. It also requires biohazard material to dispose of certain biohazard material evidence, and for that we have now, I put into place an evidence manager who actually has the time and is dedicated to going in and ensuring our inventory on management. I also introduced an audit on that management, the evidence, every year as well.
So, okay, we're going to step back because that's a lot of information.
It's a lot.
But, you know, you can't stop paying the bills.
Nope.
You've had to make sure that the electricity of all of these buildings continued, the utilities, the water, people's insurance, all of those types of things. The court system, you just talked about the domestic numbers going up. Mm-hmm. You're keeping the track of those. Although some things have slowed down, you have had to keep your office open the entire time in one manner or another.
Correct. We were actually mandated to only be open for mission critical, which were our Baker Acts, our Marchman Acts, our domestic violence injunctions, and handle those things. Our doors were open, but it was a matter of not being able to help. We are ministerial, and we don't make our own determination on those things. It's the Supreme Court that we follow, and we follow the court orders. Of course, we had several, executive orders from the governor coming in, and our local chief judge was promulgating the orders of the Supreme Court to fit the local needs. So yes, it was a challenge, and we got through that. But
it's definitely
it
evident.
never shuts down.
Right, and it's definitely evident for those people who may never have been aware that your staff is essential workers.
Yes.
I mean, they're part of the day-to-day operations of keeping our community moving forward, and people getting, the proper processes along the way, and being able to do things in a timely manner that are necessary.
Yes,
you
their
know,
constitutional rights. We're protecting and giving them access in their constitutional right to a hearing, a timely hearing, those matters.
Which goes back to what you said in the beginning, that you're impacting lives.
Yes.
You just touched about a little bit in the courts, and you talked about the child support, and you have your own child support enforcement division.
Yes, and that was a pilot. I think it's over 30 years now, or going on 30 if it's not. It was a pilot by my predecessor, Chip Shore, and he wanted to make it an easy, quick, convenient, efficient way for people to come in and get help with their child support payments. That division, I believe, collects about $26 million a year on its own. There are actually 2 attorneys up there who handle the child support, 3 attorneys who handle the child support enforcement division, and it's an entire separate office, and that is funded by the Department of Revenue. So I have 2 budgets that end on a fiscal year ending 9/30, which is tomorrow, and we start the new year October 1, and I have the DOR budget, which is on a different fiscal year, which is July 1, which is the state funded fiscal
So
year.
a lot to keep track of, especially a lot of dollars and decimal points to keep track of.
I will say this, Janine, about our child support enforcement division. I started a public outreach. So now when there are events where there'll be children, when there are backpack giveaways, when there are different events, we are going out to those events, and my child support team is assisting parents. We go to the Boys and Girls Club as well quarterly. We did until COVID hit. This is all, a lot of it's pre-COVID, but we do reach out and help those parents who work all day and can't get into our office, and they answer questions for them. They make contact, they follow back up, and it's worked out really well.
Now, and people may not know that your people, your team here. I mean, I've had various reasons else, and they've great customer service. But it's not just about taking people's money, paying people's bills, especially in child support. If somebody's delinquent, they're making notices where people may be losing their driver's license. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it's just not.
No.
They're just not they're just not bank tellers.
No, and they take in foreign judgments as well from other jurisdictions, because people move, and if there is a child support enforcement to be had against someone in this county and they move here, they will take the foreign judgment from that jurisdiction. There are numerous methods, but driver's license is one of them. If someone were to win the lottery, I haven't heard of one of those here, but if someone were to win the lottery, they would get that. With the recent CARES Act funding, I believe there were situations where the stimulus checks were also, if somebody had child support due and owing and they were behind, those stimulus checks were tapped as well.
Okay. So, all of that's part of the record. So it's not just bank telling.
No.
So let's go into your official records department. I mean, I can't imagine all of the official records that you're keeping track of.
Oh yes, the official records. We processed over 440,000 official record documents last year, and there are numerous. That's where the mortgages go, the deeds go. There are all the military discharge paperwork. I mean, the list is very long of what we record in this office. Also judgments, civil judgments, criminal judgments go there, and that is where, when you get it re-recorded, that's where, if you get a judgment against a party, it goes onto when it's re-recorded, it goes onto their credit report as well. And one thing I do want to note about our official records, something different that's happened. And when I started in 1990s, a sovereign citizen was a rare thing. Now it's very big. It's very big in this county. And we have a property alert system. One of the first things I did was the property alert system, and I challenged my IT staff, and they never let me down. They built the system, so we did not have to go out and pay for a system. But if you go to our website, you look for property alert. You can put your name in, but you have to put it in all different ways, names that you're known by, first name, last name, use all different combinations of your name. If something is filed, you'll know it right away. This is particularly good for elected officials, because elected officials, banking, anywhere where you're going to come in contact with one of these sovereign citizens, they will put a fraudulent lien against your property, and you won't know it until you go to sell your home and you're at the table ready to sign, and you find out you have an $8 million lien against your house, and you wonder, how did that happen? This has happened in other counties. When judges have come into contact with these sovereign citizens, we've had actually 2 local judges I can think of where I had to testify along with them because a lien was attempted. My office is good at intercepting it. Different clerks have different opinions. Some clerks feel that we are not to turn away documents because typically you don't. My advice to my predecessor and the advice I follow, let them sue us. If they want to file a fraudulent lien, I'm denying it at the counter if we catch it, because then if they sue us, they have to swear a complaint and that they're admitting a crime. We have successfully prosecuted people who have done that, and I take a lot of pride in that because that really causes such trouble on people's records.
Okay,
But-
just for, because I know we got quite a few backgrounds in our Kiwanis family who are attorneys. What is a sovereign citizen in layman terms?
Yes, a sovereign citizen, they are typically anti-government. They tend to quote the UCC code a lot, the Uniform Commercial Code, and you'll get a document from them. And sometimes I've seen one where they imprint a thumbprint in blood. That's how they sign their document, which now becomes a biohazard issue for us. So we actually turn those over if we suspect sovereign activity. And you can tell because the language is not, it's just not normal, and it's gibberish. And it'll say lien on it, and it'll have in there, you can make out that they're going after a banker, a local loan officer, a local judge, attorneys. I think attorneys might have been victims of that as well. So it's, I don't know how to describe it other than if you see UCC, they use terms like straw man, things like that.
I am sure none of our viewers, maybe just a few who are aware of what your office does, would ever think that somebody would actually sign their document in a thumbprint of blood.
No,
So,
no. And they're active, and it's not necessarily who you would think. There are some very professional looking people who have been successful CEOs that came to this area that are behind this movement. So that's a whole other program in and of itself.
Very interesting. Let's move on to one of the hats that is under you that is not, it is unique. And let's talk about the historic parks. Now, before you start, I know my answer, but because of a question and everybody thought, so let's talk about Gamble Mansion, because I love to ask you the question, Angel, what's going on with Gamble Mansion? And you normally say,
I don't know.
and the reason why you don't know is because it's not under you.
It is not under me at all. That is actually under the state of Florida, and it's not under my watch at all.
So talk about the historic parks that are under your watch.
This is one of my favorite subjects too. The Florida Maritime Museum is out at Cortez, and my predecessor started the idea behind a folk museum, and we carried that on and made that happen, and we're very excited about that. It'll get going again in January. COVID's presented challenges, but it's also presented an opportunity because we are revamping that museum out there. It's very exciting. We do all kinds of things. The last event they did out there was a fundraiser that the nonprofit did for us called The Gulf. I recommend that book to anyone, The Gulf, An American Sea, and it's by Jack Davis. It is an awesome book on the history of the Gulf, all along the Gulf. His talk was very good. That museum is dedicated to the village of Cortez. It is the last fishing village in the state of Florida, and I'm very committed to tell the story of the commercial fishermen out there. It's just a calling, and it's a legacy out there, and it's a beautiful village, and you need to get out there. When we get back doing folk classes again, that is a time. There are memoir writing classes, there were net mending classes, all kinds of different classes out there, and the goal is to one day have one that grandparents can take with their grandchildren to pass the legacy along.
So so let's move from Cortez
Yes.
to Palmetto.
And Palmetto has 2 sites in the same area. We have our Palmetto Ag Museum, Agriculture Museum, and our Palmetto Historic Park. The Ag Museum cooperates a lot with Easter seals, and we have in the past. It is my understanding that they were part of assisting in a garden out there at Easter seals for the participants there, and an art gallery where participants of Easter seals can show their talent by the pet portraits that they do. And again, with COVID, I'm not sure how they're system has changed at Easter Seals, but these are some of the things. We also transitioned during COVID out there to do a field trip in a bag for children. So parents were able to come in and they really appreciated it. It was huge. We actually had long lines of cars to come get these kits for taking home, for children to take home and work on projects that they otherwise do on a field trip. The Palmetto Historic Park, they have all kinds of buildings out there that were moved there. The post office, that is a partnership with Palmetto and the city of Palmetto and the nonprofit. Each of our museums has a nonprofit. And our Manatee Village Historical Park is out in Old Manatee, and that's where it all began, in Bradenton, as they called it. The Old Manatee Pioneer Days is what that village is formed after, and they do events. Last year we did one where we walked through the cemetery right next to it at night. They do the setting, and it's usually been in October. This year it won't be, but it's usually by torchlight, and we go graveside to graveside. The pioneers of this county are buried out there, and they're buried out there, and we tell the story of each person who is out there, and somebody in character tells the story. We used to have people do the characters of those people from graveside to graveside, and that's always been a success.
Just to interrupt you just for a moment, I love the fact that, okay, not only are you a government entity, I love that you and both your predecessor, Mr. Shores, really had a love for the community in creating public-private partnerships. So you talked about, the city of Palmetto working alongside the nonprofit, you guys with the historical Manatee Historic Village, the Cortez, the people who actually own homes out there who support you. And I know now during COVID, a lot of people have taken this time to learn about their own cultural legacies. So talk about Carnegie Library downtown and the importance of making sure that stays available to people as they research history about themselves.
That's one of my more exciting projects that I started to get off the ground right before COVID, but we'll get back on track with it. That library holds records dating back into the 1800s in this county. And we also put in a computer for Ancestry.com. I wanted people to be able to come in and access Ancestry on their own and do some research if they wanted. But we also hold a lot of reports over there. There were over 40,000 visitors. Well, that's to our whole historic parks. But my goal with that library is to make it the ancestry capital of this county. I would like to have a project where children can come for a day and do a summer camp, and maybe possibly branch out and have actors come in and perform the characters of local characters. But before I do that and go there, I realize the need for diversity. There's a story to tell, and of all children in this county, to tell the story of the history of this county. And there are some really fascinating people that go way back. We have a diverse historical story in this county, and it needs to be told. Keenan Wooten actually helped me kick off our first Black History Month exhibit there, and it was a success. It was about the Buffalo Soldier, and I'm sure most of you have seen Keenan Wooten with that exhibit, and he put a lot into it. We've also had an Ancestry Day last October, and that invited a handful of people came, and they got one-on-one attention with a historian. I myself learned some things about looking up old property and how people who owned property way back in the time. Here there are Sanborn fire maps. They're very comprehensive maps that used to be used for insurance, old city directories, and it's exciting to go there. Old news clippings, pictures, you name it.
Well, and people aren't even aware how much history is there on Braden and Kiwanis.
Right. True.
I know that one of our, great author and member, Judge Gilbert Smith, has done a lot of research there. He encourages people to go down there and use the facility. So
he's one of our best customers.
Yes. So I look forward to, hopefully, as we come out of the pandemic, that truly that does become, like you said, the ancestry epicenter for this region. It really would be amazing.
People thought it just held old boxes, and I did not like that when people thought it was just a storage place. It was the only one of its kind when my predecessor opened it. It was the only of its kind in a county holding historical records, and I want to take that to new heights, and I'm really looking forward to that.
And if people aren't aware, that's the old Carnegie Library.
Correct.
And the other old Carnegie Library is actually where the Palmetto,
Yes.
Historical places. So, you talked about a lot of the divisions. I have to say, I love your website. It is the most user-friendly. I was even on it last night doing some research, getting prepared for today. And that really falls under your IT department, your marketing department. Even during the pandemic, they were constantly updating it. So talk about your IT department, how that's so integral and
Okay.
important.
We have IT. I wouldn't call a marketing department, so to speak. I do have a spokesperson that assists us, because what we found when we were putting information out there, we started a Facebook page. I wasn't sure I'd be crazy about it at first. Once we got going, people loved the news, and they loved to get the educational blurbs that we gave them. So our IT department does a phenomenal job. We were the first to go online with court records. We were the first pilot. I'm just going to hold this up because you get the idea. This was built, this is our security matrix for our online court records, and it's about as complicated as it looks when it's thrown in front of you. My first job, I was told, don't mess this up, when I came in as general counsel. So I was actually tasked on a state committee to build the statewide matrix that looks very much like this and is exactly the same, pretty much the same. So we took a while and we built that statewide matrix on the Florida Courts Technology Commission. And our IT department was a big driving force in that. They have revamped our website, and for the better. We had to update it under the hood. It was archaic, so we did that, and it should be faster. It comes up on mobile sites. Our plat records now can be accessed as well a little quicker on there. And we're doing an overhaul into our intranet, which I think is important and key for employees to stay engaged with one another. I want to do a SharePoint type system where they can give each other kudos on a central area and make it a user-friendly intranet for the office. I had to go to the county last year, as did many other government offices. The ask was cybersecurity. My focus is on cybersecurity right now. Our IT department I tasked them with coming up with a challenge. With COVID, spirits have gotten pretty down in the office on all of us. It's wearing on everybody, as you can imagine, things being different. IT divided the office up into teams of about 25 to 30 people. They just started today, and each team will get points for the classes they take online, short classes in cybersecurity, and the tests that they successfully do with our the Know Before program that it's called. And we will do phishing tests on the website. So each team is responsible at the end of next year when we do our awards for the office. I created an awards program for the office. That team will take bragging rights and they'll get awarded something. We haven't decided yet, but everyone's excited about that. It's given something to come together with, and they don't get to pick their teams. Everybody was assigned randomly by IT. So I'm looking forward to it bringing people together who don't necessarily work together. Our policies are being overhauled and updated to conform with IT, email policies, things like that. Everything we do is a public record, so we need to learn to manage that properly. We're stewards of the community, and we need to do that. We are also the very first office, since we went online with court records. One of my first projects was tasked with working with IT and working with an outside vendor and coming up with, and they did it very quickly, we have to destroy records. We used to destroy them old-fashioned and give them to a company. We still shred, but now destroying court files, we used to take the files out. Now we have to destroy them electronically. Well, how do you do that other than going one by one through each line of a docket on screen? That's not doable. So we now have an electronic records system that is now in civil. We've been testing it in civil. So we go through and destroy the records as they come forth. There's a procedure for that, and now there's an electronic mean to do it with one button, but several authorizations.
See, again, people are learning things that they don't know. It's phenomenal, everything that you've been doing. So share with us your accomplishments. I will say I do love the Facebook. It comes up through my feed. You guys are wonderful about acknowledging the work of your employees who do some phenomenal volunteering. Not just, here for those projects that you do, but out in the community, and how you celebrate that, how you update us on, like you said, the Green Light Project days, or if there's an open Saturday where people can come in. But talk about the accomplishments of the office.
Those are things that I'm very proud of. When I go through Facebook, I think to myself, I had a close working relationship with my predecessor, Chip Shore, and I think he'd be proud when I have to go back and I flip back through Facebook to see all that we've done. I will say this, right before COVID, Summer Smith Pope, who used to be with Bay News 9, started with our office. I needed someone to keep up with the media. It was so demanding, and it got to be a lot. And poor Summer, she came in right at that last second, and we really needed her to get the COVID information out. She was just priceless in that respect. But we had Child Abuse Prevention Month. In April, we took a collection up for teddy bears. Amazon heard what we were doing, and they wanted to join in collecting with us. So I thought we would get maybe a few hundred teddy bears. We ended up collecting just under 2,000 teddy bears to hand out to law enforcement to use to hand to children that they encounter on sad calls and scary calls to a child that they have to encounter. So those teddy bears have gone out. This last year for children's services and foster care, we brought in pajamas and different necessities, and we divvied it up among, we actually collected the pajamas for the foster care and children's services necessities that they listed. And HOPE Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which begins in a couple days, October 1. Last year we collected over 2,000 items for HOPE service, or actually the year before, 2,000 items. Last year we did a book drive. So we collected hundreds of books, several hundred books, and we have a book nook. Well, obviously with COVID it's down, but a book nook in our area where parents go to fill out injunctions, and they sometimes, many times, have children with them. And if they take the book, so be it. Then a child has a book, and they have a book to read and maybe escape the issues that they're going through. And I even encourage my staff, if you're on a break and you want to read to a child that's sitting out there, I'm sure the parents would like it, ask their permission. Dive into reading. We volunteered Dive into reading last year. It was easier to do this year with COVID, presented a lot of challenges. But we helped 35 children last year at risk in the Dive to Reading program. We love to volunteer with John and Amanda in that program. New volunteer program, and we put in over 350 hours last year. Employees are allowed to do 4 hours every 6 months, 8 hours a year. We do an awareness to Constitution Week, which just passed, and I have pocket constitutions that we pass out, and we put little quizzes, if you will, on Facebook about the Constitution, or facts, fun facts. An awareness to Sunshine Week. Many of you may not know what Sunshine Week is, but Sunshine Week is when the press used to be, they would come in, and historically it's like a secret shopper on your public records. They want to make sure that you're doing it right, that you're not asking for someone's ID or who they are or anything. When someone asks for a public record, you just get the public record. There may be questions that have to be asked if it's someone asking for something in a file that's confidential, but they're that person. The press, I don't think they tested on those, but general tests of our compliance with public record. And now that we're online, I don't think they come in as much anymore, but we do an awareness and a training. We take it upon ourselves that year to do an annual refresher training for our employees in public records. We also wear yellow for the kickoff of Sunshine Week. We have an employee recognition program where at the end of the year, we just started last year, we recognize employees, and they're voted on by their peers, Employee of the Year, Manager of the Year, and Core Value Awards. And that's pretty much, in a nutshell, what I can think of.
We've only got about 3 minutes left, so I know.
I'm sorry, I thought this
No, this was great.
Okay.
This is great. So we're going to, so we talked about what you're doing to every day. We've talked about your accomplishments. Share with us your vision. What's on the horizon?
On the horizon is I'm focusing on our employees, on the training, on having them onboarded. We're working on an orientation video, and I'll do quick. I want to do on-the-job training for seniors in high school. I'd like to get them, if they don't want to go to college yet, or maybe some kids aren't interested in college. I've always said, this is your own VOTEC, this office, and you can grow and move up within the organization, because so I would like to partner with the on-the-job training programs in high school and get kids before they get maybe too jaded by a workplace, and show them how positive and uplifting it can be, because you're working for a greater good. I want to establish a speakers bureau, and here's the one that's coming up very soon, our online form wizard, and that will be for pro se filers and small claims and tenant evictions, different areas deemed by the Supreme Court that we could do this form wizard. You just fill out the form, it will be electronic, and you can upload to our e-file system. That will be great for people. It'll afford people access from a computer.
Okay, so Now, I have down here, I wanted you to go over personal notes, but you're about to take on the role in a new position statewide that you were appointed last year. Why don't you talk to our audience about that and the importance of that?
Okay, real quick, I'm actually president-elect of the Florida Clerks and Comptrollers Association. Next year I will take on the role of president in that association as well. I was recently also appointed to the Florida Courts Technology Commission. I'd always served on the Access Governance Board, which worked on that matrix I showed you earlier. But now I'm actually sitting at the big table, and I'm a voting member of the commission appointed by the Supreme Court. Senator Galvano was graciously appointed me to the Clerk of Courts Operating Corporation. I have 1 year, I'm in my last year of serving on that, and that is where our budget comes from. I'm chair of the Bylaws Committee and vice chair of the Legislative Committee, and I've been tasked with overseeing the drafting of our bill this year for clerks to help us with our funding.
So I guess those right there are good reasons why you haven't moved up in leadership of Kiwanis yet then, right?
That would be the case.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes. You did all of that in a minute, I can't believe. Let's dive into, why don't you just share with our audience COVID crisis? What can we as public citizens help you in your office moving forward?
The COVID crisis has hit clerks horribly, and I'll go as fast as I can. In a typical for us, our collections are $500,000. We are fined by our fees only that we take in, fines and fees and traffic citations, civil traffic citations. To give you an idea of what COVID did to clerks in Manatee County, our weekly figures went from approximately 400,000 intake in the first week of March to the lowest was $54,332 in April. The first full week of April, we saw our figures plummet, and we have to live off of that, what we collect. I was understaffed at 93 court personnel. I went down to 65 court personnel. Sadly, I had to lay off and furlough several employees. It hurt my heart beyond what anyone could imagine. Our payroll in March, before COVID, $434,000 payroll that month. I went down to $342,000 in September. I had to realize an 8% cut within 3 months of our budget because of how we're funded. I had to dump 8% in 3 months. That is not easy to do. Our family division, we had some resignations, which left me with no one covering our family division, our county civil division, our civil area. We're just now trying to get back to filling those positions. The clerks have no stable method of funding other than these fees, and we are not allowed to carry a reserve. We are working with our legislature. We were hoping some funding would come through and working with the governor's office. I think they were relying on the CARES Act funding, which, by the way, we process all the CARES money for the county upstairs. It's just been an absolute, we've had to let go of all these employees when any minute now the governor could flip the switch and turn evictions on and foreclosures on, and now I have even less of a staff than I had to begin with in this office. Once courts get back up and running fully, we're going to have a problem. I've had to take 3 court clerks out of my trial clerk department just to cover the other area. So if you happen to see our representatives, they're so supportive. Please encourage them to help the clerks with their funding, and they are supportive of our funding. Thank you.
Now, Angel, thank you. I hope that you who have been viewing will share this link with your friends. You really don't know what's going on in our own backyard unless you sit, ask some questions, and give our elected officials the opportunity to really share their heart's desire, why they do what they do. I think, Angel, you've done an amazing job of doing that today, very precisely and with enthusiasm. We can definitely tell you're passionate about your job, and we appreciate that. So to our Kiwanians, thank you for tuning in today. We hope you'll join us next week. Don't forget, we're moving on to our secession plan, the next set of our elected Kiwanians coming up, and then our following week, the mayor's campaign open forum. So stay tuned, and thank you so much for joining us.